Today's conversation is sponsored by the Billy Keels Advisory Program. If you want to learn more about how to make your 9 to 5 optional, just go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast, the #1 podcast for the strategies, tactics, and actions high wage earners need for living an intentionally designed life of wealth and resilience.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident, creating a life that's wealthy as well as resilient. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and I'm really excited to share another amazing, let's say, solo episode with you. I know you like these. I love being able to share some of the stories with you and helping you to actually get closer to that wealthy and resilient life that you are looking to and are in the process of creating. So I always like to say thank you. I appreciate you continuing to invest your time right up front with me. And also, too, a big, huge thank you for investing your time with me. And for those of you who've even taken the extra step to tag us on Instagram, to tag us on LinkedIn, bring other people to the Go Along podcast, really want to say thank you so much for everything that you continue to do. And those of you who are still thinking about, but getting ready to leave an honest written review, we made it really simple for you. There's a nice little video and you can leave your honest written review. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, so that we can work on changing it and bringing you the most amazing podcast in the world. Continue to be in the top 1.5% of podcasts, according to listennotes.com. Go check that out. And even feel free to share that with your friends. So, and also for those of you who want to understand a bit more about some of the previous episodes, like I said, over 390, I think at this point in time that we've published, just go to billykeels.com/podcast and you can find every single episode, transcripts, audios, videos, billykeels.com/podcast. So one of the things that I want to talk about today, and you've already seen it, or you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be listening. It's a lot of times, one of the things that I want to share with you is something that I learned in my corporate career and actually even was very thankful for after my corporate career. And that was, something that I learned from watching someone else suffer. Like I want to share this story. And like I said, I like to keep these episodes relatively brief, but there's something about taking action and being able to take educated action, maybe a little bit before you even feel ready, right? I know that I went through that process, and I'm glad that I went through that process over a decade ago, because today's Billy really thanks younger Billy for taking the action that he did when he did, even though he didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle, which was a huge struggle for younger Billy. It's still a struggle for older Billy, but it was a real huge struggle for younger Billy. But one of the things that I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, right? I want to tell you guys a story, and a story of an ex-colleague of mine. So I'd been at the enterprise software company that I worked for a long time, and as most of you know, I was a top talent in that company. I was someone who was a high producer. I was working crazy hours and also providing crazy important results, helping the company grow the top line, doing it in a way that was profitable. I even had the opportunity to manage a business that was about $100 million across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, also known as EMEA, and even closed a couple of large 8-figure type of business deals, 25 million above dollars, and being able to do that in a different language, different culture. But one of the things that I really appreciated was the friendships that were created. A lot of the professional friendships that were created. And I want to tell a story about this guy. Well, and the guy, I'm going to change his name. Where I live here in Barcelona, let me make up a name that's kind of a typical name maybe for here. Let's call this guy Jordi. We're going to call him Jordi. It's a very kind of typical name where I live. So one of the things I saw in when you're in a multinational for a long time, or a very large multinational like the one I was in, there was over 150,000 employees. And there's constantly, every so many years, there are there's some synergies that take place. Maybe a company, they buy another company, and then there's a synergy that takes place. That basically means heads are going to roll. Some people are not going to be there afterwards. Or at the end of the day, there are some people that are there, and every so often they have to make an adjustment to make sure that the company is more profitable. It's just a part of the rat race. It's part of big company culture, and you just have to learn to accept it or do something else. And so one of the rounds that were happening, there were a number of people that were talking about, there was going to be a reduction in the workforce, and so typically sales, you were exempt from that. But this particular year, one of my colleagues was, well, he was, his number was called, and so remember, he was in his probably really early 40s, not at mid 40s, but early 40s or early 50s, excuse me, early 50s. He was in his early 50s, and I thought to myself, wow, it was one of those rounds where we're also bringing in younger talent. The younger talent was coming in at less salary, and the less salary, also the younger talent had a lot more energy. They were working more hours, they were doing more things, maybe more potential. And so you saw this, and this is something that's been going on forever, right? Um, every so often there is just a regeneration or rejuvenization, if that's even a word. I got five languages in my mind, so sometimes I get a little bit confused. Um, but bringing in younger talent and some of the talent that had been around for a longer time, higher wages, and maybe a little bit more sophisticated in the way that they were achieving the results, it was time to make a move. And so my friend here at this point in time, Jordi is his name, not his real name, by the way, just the name I'm giving him in this conversation, didn't want to, like, wasn't really looking forward to leaving, but left. And so that made me think to myself, wow, because I was in my late 30s. And I thought to myself, wow, like, this person was producing at a high level, had just been in Hawaii with me a year before, and found himself like out the door. And I thought, oh my gosh. So this made me think all sorts of different things, right? And most importantly, I thought to myself, like, do I want to be in that position? Like, do I want to be in that position? Because a lot of the conversations were, okay, man, sorry that you're leaving, but what are you going to do? You got kids, and how's your family going to react? And where are you going to go? What's happening? Of course, wanted to understand and make sure that he felt okay, but it was the realities, and those are the questions that you're typically asking, or I didn't want to have to start asking them myself. And I even started thinking, wow, would I even be prepared? Like, if I projected, 13 years, 14 years in the future, would I be prepared, or would I just be in a very similar situation? Would I be asking myself, okay, well, am I prepared? Do I have enough network? Do I just leave this job and go get another job doing the same thing, working for a competitor? There's also this feeling inside that I had, like, in the knot, a knot in my stomach. Like, would I be perceived as a failure? Like, would my family be worried? Would I make them concerned that I wouldn't be able to provide for them? Like, all these thoughts were going in my mind, but when I watched this thing that was happening with my buddy Jordi. And so um, I was always at that point in my career, I was very, very busy. I was always focusing on the priorities of the company and making sure that I was at all the meetings and the things that I've told you about before. But I was that person. Like, I was bought in on the corporate goal. I was drinking the Kool-Aid, and I knew that I was more than likely going to be in a very similar. I would have been in a similar situation. I would have been stuck. I would have probably been extremely exhausted because I was working so many hours in that particular role. So I realized that I had to do something different. And very fortunately, the boss that I had at the time, well, my boss at the time was a guy who was from Scotland, who was actually living in Barcelona, but was investing in back in Scotland. And I thought, wow, hang on a second. And remember, one day we were sitting in the office, and he starts telling me about how he was working where he was, but he also had another plan B, let's call it. And that was the first time I'd ever had an interaction with anybody who talked to me and shared, and with lots of humility, like, what was also possible. And I saw him at the job. He was like really great boss, and he was enjoying himself and having fun and helping us grow, and also had his own thing. And I thought, wow, this is really, really cool. So how do I understand, like, how do I tap into the happiness that he had? How do I start to realize what can be done? And so I started going down a similar track. I studied for a really long time. I didn't take any action. Eventually, I missed my son's birthday. And when I missed my son's birthday, well, that was the pain that really got into my heart. It got into my stomach. That's what made me start to take action. And even though these assets were thousands of kilometers or thousands of miles away, I decided to go down a similar track and invest back in hard assets, specifically real estate, back in the United States. And the thing that was cool about that is, right before I'd sat down and I created my own plan. It was a 5-year plan. I was supposed to do that plan. I had it laid out. It was a SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Right. So there you go. Probably do another episode on that. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure I will. But it created this 5-year plan. And once I started taking action, I realized that this distance thing, because living in Barcelona, Spain, and investing back on the East Coast of the United States, like most people would ask me like, Billy, are you absolutely out of your mind? Like people don't even normally buy like an hour outside of town, and you're going to do it with the Atlantic Ocean in between you and the property. Like that's insane. And so what I realized is that, yes, it was maybe perceived that way, but what it helped me to do was really focus on process, not the property, right? That I figured out later because things started happening and didn't have processes in place, started getting certain processes in place. And then once those processes were in place, we're able to better serve our clients who are our residents, being able to better actually have the properties that we had available visible to other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I actually was able to amass enough assets to start paying me in my sleep, it allowed me almost a decade later to be free from my corporate. Like the last 4 years of my corporate job, it was optional. Like I didn't have to go there, but I went there because I was a happy employee. Like it was on my LinkedIn profile. Go check out my LinkedIn profile today, see what it says. It's very different. But at the time, I was a happy corporate employee because I was going to work every day because I wanted to, not because I had to, not because I dreaded it, because I needed the paycheck, because I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. I really enjoyed it. I liked my job a lot. Used to say I loved it. I really realized I liked it a lot. Had a wonderful, amazing opportunity to have some phenomenal friendships that were created. And aside from being able to be free from corporate life, saying I no longer need the 9 to 5 at age 48, what I realized through that whole experience is that I had the confidence in myself to be able to go out and create a dream and make that dream a reality. Now, for me, it was real assets. For you, it may be something else. But going through that process, I realized it wasn't about being able to leave corporate at 48. Like that was cool. But it was that I realized that I would be able to think of something, create a dream, and then be able to not just manifest that dream, but make it become a reality. And that was the thing that was more important for me, because the action that I took when I was in my late 30s to be able to avoid a difficult situation gave me more control that today, Big Billy thanks Little Billy for taking action back then. Action sometimes on imperfect information, but had Little Billy not taken that action, Big Billy wouldn't be here talking to you, sharing with you this story. And so when you start thinking about taking action today, along the way, of course, I didn't do all of it by myself. I got mentors, I got coaches, I had people that were a part of my inner circle, some of them that were with me along the way from corporate, some that I paid along the way to help me get to the end result. Thanking Little Billy today. I do it every single day. I thank him for taking the action. And if you feel like you may be a little bit stuck, like you want to take action, but you don't have the right people around you, you don't know somebody who's been there on the path that you want to now go down, well, maybe if you're listening to this and any of this sounds like it resonates with you, well, maybe you want to check out and find out a little bit more about what we have to offer you from the advisory service, Billy Keels Advisory Services. You can find out more about that, see if it's the right fit for you. Go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising. Find out a little bit more. If it's the right fit, you can learn, go through the application, we can chat. If not, take the content from this podcast, recognize that it's just a matter of going through the process and taking action today. Take it today because your future self is going to thank you, right? Even if things don't go 100% according to plan, you're going to gain an experience. Your future self is going to thank you. So while you're taking today's conversation, you're sharing it with other people. I'm going to be here preparing for the next either conversation or solo episode. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Today's conversation was sponsored by the Billy Keels Advisory Program. If you're looking to make your 9 to 5 optional and need some help, just go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising.